Hello, ladies. I hope you're doing well. I'm so honored that you came to listen here, and I hope you get a lot done while I talk and keep you company, and I hope I don't get in your way. The purpose of this is to give you something to listen to that's encouraging while you do some daily things that are a little bit repetitive or monotonous. And I remember in the olden days how our mothers used to listen to the radio, and they had certain times that they liked to turn it on because they knew that there would be a program or something that they liked to listen to would come at that certain time, and then they would wash dishes or do something else. And I thought it might be interesting to have a homemaker's radio. And I'm Mrs. Sherman. I'm a veteran homeschooler, and I'm a preacher's wife of many years. And I want to tell you, first of all, that what I'm doing here is my own opinion based on my own experience. I don't expect anybody to emulate me or copy me. I'm just sharing and in a way entertaining you with it, and some of you might have similar, I'll be sharing similar memories that you have and experiences and ideas. And of course, this is not for women of a certain age. It's for young people too, because I believe that the generations were created by God to interact, and we're interwoven with them. I am so excited about some of the things that the young people are doing, and I like to watch the videos of young people and how they are making their lives count and using the talents and the life that God's given them. I enjoy that so much, and I learn so much from it, and I am so stimulated by it. And I believe that this will never be an over 30, over 40, over 50, over 60, over 70, even though I am nearly over 70. Blog or video is for everybody, and I am going to be speaking to the young people today. Those of you who are still at home, maybe still at home with your parents, and to young people who might need a little bit of encouragement, I will be telling you a few things. So I hope that you will stand by and listen. Now, before you go and you start doing your laundry and folding things, I'm going to show you my teacup. And this is so special because it was from the anonymous lady that sent me the set of 6. And I'm going to show you the set of 6 in a picture, but it kind of goes with the outfit I have on. This is a dress made by the company called April Cornell, and I always wanted to see what they were like, and I found one that was secondhand and not the huge price that they usually have. And I wanted to see how they were constructed because I tried one on years ago in a shop, and it was just gorgeous, and I just loved it. But it was over $200, and we were joking around saying, what a bargain, let's get 2. So I didn't get it, but I found this, and I observed, I'm a sewer, and I like to sew, and I've observed that they use so many tiny pieces to put this garment together, and that's one thing that has helped know how it's constructed is that the reason that I love my cotton dresses is they're just 2 pieces, the front and the back, and maybe some sleeves, and there are no pieces to sew in, and they're easier to get on. These dresses sometimes have attached linings and slips and things that get all tangled up and cannot be removed and need adjusting, and they're just a little more complicated to wear, but it's nice to have one. So today I have 3 things I'm going to talk to you about, and that is getting your preparation, prep. I always call it prep on my list. Getting your list ready, getting the homemaking done, and talking a little bit about people. Now, I don't have very good notes, so it won't be a smooth presentation. I'm not a professional speaker, and I am not a professional model either, so I don't want any more remarks about my hair, and I'm not a professional makeup artist, so I'm not going to be painting my face the way you want it, and so I don't want to hear any more about that. Sometimes I get some strange emails. So ladies, today in getting dressed, and I think this is important, I have on occasion decided that, oh well, I'll get up and get my cup of tea, sit down with my list, and then I'll get dressed. Then I see things that need to be done, so there I am walking around in my sleeping attire and my robe and slippers and picking things up and putting them away, and next thing you know, I'm putting stuff in the dishwasher. And then things start to deteriorate. And I have found this, that usually there's some kind of confusion at home, or someone comes to the door when I do that. Isn't that Murphy's Law or something? And so I would suggest that you always make it a priority to get dressed first thing, even if there's no hope for you getting anything done that day, and even if you think things are falling apart, make that getting dressed a priority for yourself. And if you think of yourself as an ambassador for your family, an ambassador for the church that you're a member of, an ambassador for your country, it's amazing, isn't it? You know, people do, unfortunately, judge you, and judge your country, and judge your family, and judge the church you belong to by you and by the way you look. But when you have to think about, the Bible does say we're ambassadors of Christ, and so you represent. An ambassador is a representative, so dress as a representative, as an ambassador. And I hate to ask this question because I'm afraid that in this day and age, the answer might not be so favorable, but years ago, in the olden days, you could say, would an ambassador walk around the street shopping for bread and butter and milk in their pajamas? Would an ambassador invite people to his house or her house, or open the door and talk to people when their hair was disheveled and they looked like they just got out of bed? But these days, you know, the answer just the way people are, the answer might be yes. And I somehow have blamed the manufacturers and designers for the control they have over the factories, and what comes out of the factories and ends up on the rack at the stores that everyone shops at, the affordable stores, for the demise of the clothing. So have you noticed, I do want to talk about dress a little bit and why you must dress up for your home. I've always said, well, there's nowhere else to go and the Queen is not coming, but you might say something else. We're not going out as much. We're not going out to eat as much. We're not going to any events. Might as well use this at home. And then when we're not so confined, or when things are a little better economically, just get new ones. But go ahead and use them up and wear them out. And so you remember seeing photographs of people during the Great Depression? I guess that was between, was it 1929 and 1933? And the poverty was so bad that the only things they had left to wear were their suits. So even lined up in a food line for food and a soup kitchen, people were very decently dressed. The men wore ties and coats and hats, and the women also dressed up and wore hats. They just looked their best. And so often when we have worn out all of our at-home clothes, we can go dig a little deeper into our closet, get some of the dressier clothes, just put an apron over them and go ahead and wear them, because what else are you going to do with them? I don't think anyone wants them. And if you give them to Goodwill or St. Vincent de Paul's, they just sell them, and they're making money off of your free gift, and somebody else has to buy them. That's somebody that might have a need and have to shell out money, so you might as well just wear them. So another thing about your clothing, and it's tempting when you're home more often now, and maybe all the time, it's tempting to let go of everything, let go of yourself. I forget what the phrase is, let herself go, it's called. It's very tempting, isn't it? Because you don't have a strict taskmaster holding a schedule over you and demanding that you be there at a certain time fully dressed. You wouldn't think of going to a workplace not fully dressed. Well, you never know these days. It's so strange. But your clothes and method of dress show who you are honoring. Now, we are either going to honor one or the other. We're either going to honor God, or we're going to honor some other force in our lives. And that's one reason why I don't dress like I try not to dress like I don't care, because I want to dress as though I am an ambassador, and also that I'm honoring God, and that I'm a reflection of His beauty and creation. I want to be that way. And that's the way that I've always that's been one of my ambitions all the time, is to dress as an ambassador, because as a representative. And so, of course, there are always exceptions, but the problem is these days people have started to use exceptions in dress as the rule for their lives. Well, there's always an exception. As I said, would an ambassador walk around in their night clothes shopping in the town? An ambassador that represented another country. And yet someone will say, oh yeah, well, we had one once that did, but that's an exception. That's not an excuse. It's not to be used as an excuse. So ladies, I hope you're not standing here watching me. I don't intend to take up your time. I would like to make your time more efficient. And so you don't need to watch. There isn't anything to watch here. I might show you one other thing here, and that is a little schedule, but I will explain a little bit about it first. Go ahead and get to work and do your whatever it is you're doing, and we'll talk a little bit, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about housekeeping and homemaking and some other thing, and perhaps you can translate it to your young people that are growing up in your home. I am homeschooling you, remember? And if you do very well, we may have a graduation ceremony, and you may get a certificate. I'll see if I can do that. Work up a certificate that you could print off that said you have a certificate in homeschooling. This is just my private school here. And so I'm homeschooling you because it's the only way that I know how to do this. So it's the only way I know how to talk anymore. And I had all this homeschool experience and all these homeschool materials, and I thought, well, they're just sitting in an old box getting dusty. Why waste it on just my children? I'll waste it on you. So hopefully it will be useful to you. It's easy to become lax, and when you're in the home all the time, it's easy to become lax because when you have to learn to be self-employed, you have to learn to be self-disciplined. Well, it's the same with homemaking. You have to learn to be self-motivated and self-disciplined. And really, if you ask God to help you, you're not really being self-motivated or self-disciplined. You're being motivated by His grace and His beauty and His order and His creation. So it's easy, though, to become lax and overlook things in the home. I have had a few days where I just didn't feel very well, kind of had an earache, and so you only need a couple of days of not feeling well, and you say, well, I'll just pick that up later, or I'll just do that later. And then when you get well again, you're still in a thinking mode. Oh, I'll just walk past that. I won't fold that. I won't put that away. I'll go get that stuff later. And it's easy to get in the habit of being lax and overlooking things and passing by tasks. So in order to be efficient and be ahead and be prepared, I always remember in Wives and Daughters when Mr. Hamley came in the door of his farmhouse cottage, and Molly was there. She was there to help Mrs. Hamley, who wasn't feeling well. And he said, I need to take off my boots. Madam wouldn't like it if I wore this in the house. He says, I've adapted to her fine London ways, and I'm all the better for it. And so, in this current situation in 2020, with all the restrictions on people and all the disadvantages that are going on right now, let's see if you and I can come over on the other side all the better for it. How can you use a disadvantage as an advantage? How can you become all the better for it? One of my sons was visiting me the other day, and he's 43. He's 43. And he said, Mom, if I'd have thought I could have walked every single day, gone for a long walk, and at the end of this time right now, I would have been for 50 walks. Now, ladies, let's not lose any more time saying, if I'd have known that I would have had all this free time, all this time at home, I could have done this better, I could have accomplished this, or I could have used up my fabric, or I could have cleaned all those drawers in the kitchen. or I could have done all these exercises or taken an art class. Let's not do that. Let's come out of the other side better than, who is it in the Bible that was in a very, very tragic, unfortunate, and traumatic situation and came out better on the other side? Can you send me an email or a comment and tell me who that was that actually used it as an advantage? And he said to his brothers, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And look what he did with the time that was given him in a very bad situation. Let's do that, okay? Now I've got some, are you ready to get on board with this? Just do it yourself. You don't have to join a group. You don't have to agree to anything. You have to be self-motivated and self-employed, and you have to make your own list. And I'll show you a picture of it in just a minute. I just made a quick one. Okay, so let's remember that scripture, and I believe it's 2 Corinthians 4:8. I'll try to remember to put that in for you in the post. And that is, we are cast down but not defeated. Remember that part. We are cast down but not defeated. Okay, so let's not be defeated. Ours is not a goal of defeat at all. So let's make it a goal. This is my idea. Let's make it a goal to use the current situation to make something successful of it, to make something successful of ourselves and others. Now you look at the person I was talking about in the Bible that used a dreadful situation. It could have been very similar to this situation. It was during a very, very difficult time to make something better of ourselves and be of some benefit to others, shall we? And here is how I am going to outline this for you. I'd like to invite you to create a plan for yourself. Not everybody's going to have the same goals and the same needs, but I'd like to invite you to create a plan, a general plan, to come out on the other side of this and beat them at their own game. To come out on the other side of this in better health, better habits, better home skills, a nicer home, a cleaner home, a prettier home, knowledge, better spirit, more youthful, stronger, thinner, better use of time, more efficient, something you've never, doing something better that you've never really had time to perfect, happier, maybe even more prosperous. Well, who could help but be more prosperous? Because when you're home and you're using the resources available to you, you're not having so much money go out. You're going to have more coming in than going out, hopefully. More inventive, better organized, more orderly, better prepared, and better moods. Do you think you want to try that? Well, it's interesting. I decided that I would just make a little chart, and that I have one on a scrap of paper over there, and I've been keeping track so that it's hard to be motivated when you don't have a taskmaster over you, so you have to be like a self-employed person, and you have to make a schedule for yourself or a list. And I don't make a schedule because if it were by time, like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I'd get behind and then I'd be discouraged. But I just make a list. And here's what my chart looks like. At the top, I have my exercise, and I do put my teeth there because, of course, I've had lectures from my dentist, you need to floss, and I don't want to disappoint him. He's such a nice boy. Isn't that interesting? The older you get, the more these dentists and doctors look like they're 16, When we were little, they were all older than us, but I want to make my dentist successful. So, so I have my teeth there, and I have my exercise, and my sewing, and my letters, art, and walk every day. Go for a walk, and then I make a chart, and then I put an X. Now, why would I do that? Well, it can be rather tedious and sometimes boring, and I'm going for a walk thinking, oh, it's so boring. And I'm all alone, and nobody's come to see me, and everybody has to stay home, and I come home and I put a little X in that box, and I just feel bolstered again, and I'll look at the next one, And so make yourself a little chart. I'll try to put a picture of it here. Now, when I have things like sewing and art, I might do that once a week, but I'll check the part that's there, and I have all those appointments. Now, these are appointments, and appointments are really important. I remember when my children were homeschooled that one of them had a sport that he liked to go to that was an individual type sport, and so I took him every week, and how all week he looked forward to that. When the day came, that morning he was up and he was standing up straight and he was so enthusiastic. He was looking forward to that appointment, and it was from him that I learned what appointments can do to you. You get ready for them, and there's something that you look forward to. So these are appointments in my home, and I have an appointment with my library down there to go through a couple of books and clean out a little section there. I have an appointment in my exercise room back there, and I have an appointment in my art room and my music room over there, and I have an appointment in my sewing room, and I have an appointment with my in my office for letter writing and my newsletter. And ladies, I would like to encourage you all. I wish I'd brought all the newsletters here that I've been getting. They're so nice. And one lady is in her 80s, and she sends me a newsletter, and all she does, it's not fancy like some of us that put it in little boxes and columns and drawings and decorations around the side. She just writes, this continues the memory of my work in, and she had gone to some foreign country years ago when she was really young with a church. And she just says, this continues my memories, and she'll say one time this and that, and then she will copy it on a little copy machine she owns and sends it out to all her friends. And she says that newsletter has really cheered her up and done her good to send that out, and to have a mailing list, and it's just really nice. And I really encourage you to have a newsletter. Now, those of you who are wanting to homeschool your children, here's what I think was the most effective for me for teaching my children. If I'd gotten past the part where they could read and write and could take care of themselves, would be to start a newsletter, and that way their work is known and their progress is evident. Remember, the Apostle Paul told the young preacher Timothy to make the work in his life and his progress evident to all. And so this way, you don't have just a little bunch of little pieces of paper or even a notebook full of the children's work as they learn, but they send out a newsletter and they title it. They give it a title, and they'll write a dip and a dab from everything that they have learned from a book. For instance, what they learned about reading, or maybe a saying or a quote or something from their math book or something, and they would put it all on one page and the back of the page and make a newspaper out of it. And they had so much fun with it, and they even wrote their own stories. They wrote biographies. They'd read a story about someone like an artist or an author, and they would find out when they were born and what they did with their youth, and they would just write it in their newsletter. And they had to handwrite them because I wanted them to practice their handwriting. And this way, the grandparents and the aunts and uncles could be in touch with what they were doing in homeschool, and it wasn't a big mystery to other people. They could see their progress, and they even did a little artwork. There would be a corner there where they could draw something, and they just enjoyed it. I wish I had them. My daughter's was called The Pleasant Times, and one of my sons was called The Informer. Now, The Pleasant Times is still her blog name. That's where she got her blog name, and it's on my sidebar if you want to go to hers. And so I would just suggest put their schoolwork for the day or for the week, or at the end of the week, have them do a newsletter as their schoolwork. That's what I did. I just quit using anything else, but whenever they wanted to learn something, I'd say, okay, you want to learn it? Let's write it down on a newsletter. You can title your newsletter and then fill up the little spaces and sections, fill up your history and your geography and your art, and do little sections on a newsletter. Then print it, then send it to someone who's curious about homeschooling or who's worried that they're not learning anything, and do a newsletter. Maybe as I go through my archives, I can find copies of those beautiful, beautiful newsletters. And I had one too, when it was called Home Living. And I just wrote, and we were all handwriting everything in those days. And I just wrote, and they had to look things up, you know, and I corrected them and all before we sent them out. So I just wanted to give you that little hint. And those of you who aren't writing newsletters, I'd really suggest commonplace newsletters is what I like to call them. Just a dip and a dab of every thought you have. In fact, what I have just told you, about inviting you to make a success of these trying times by coming out on the other side with better health, better habits, a better home, better skills, better knowledge, being more efficient, being stronger and thinner. And you know, I'd like to put younger here, but that just isn't really realistic. Getting better at getting things done you've never had time for, being happier, more prosperous, having more incentive, being more organized, more orderly, better prepared, having better moods. And put that in that's what I'm going to put in my next newsletter. I'm going to put that challenge in my next newsletter, plus I'm going to put my little diagram of a chart there that you could follow. I'm going to put that in my next newsletter. I'll get a picture of it for you if I ever get it done. And you know, I talked about prayer time before, and I thought to myself, you know, when this is all over, that many of us are going to regret we did not spend more time in prayer. What can be more important than that? Make sure that you have regular prayer time and concentrate on it and think about it. And I think that also another thing that's very, very helpful, and I had not previously considered this, because I was one of these people who thought that if I had enough housework to do and I was mopping floors and I was vacuuming and I was reaching up and dusting and I was lifting little children and I was lifting baskets of laundry, that I had my exercise. But that is not the case, because I came out of that having a kind of a paralysis on my right side that just never felt good, and a little bit of pain when I moved, you know. And the exercise that I've been taking, mainly I've been finding places on YouTube where people have gentle exercises for people over 50 and stretches, and I'll try to do maybe 2 of them. They might have 10, but I'll do 2 of each thing that they do, and I'm very careful with it. But I have found that it is not true that housework is enough. We really need exercise, but you don't need to go to the gym. And one of the ladies that I I turn her video on is Katrina at Idlewise Pattern. She's got a 1950s exercise routine that she follows, and you can turn that on. I might do 2 or 3 of each set. I don't do all of them, but I just have to tell you what a difference that makes in my mood and my attitude towards being at home and being a little more isolated, and being you know, the house and the housework. It doesn't overwhelm me mentally anymore. I don't walk around in circles anymore. I don't feel exhausted, and I am amazed. Of course, people tried to tell me in the past, but they didn't motivate me enough, you know. But I just like to tell you, find something. Another lady that I go and find her stretch exercises, because I don't want to be jumping around and I don't want to be running. And she does walking exercises and she does stretch exercises, and therefore over 50, fabulous 50. If you're very young and you're not used to exercising and you're out of shape or you're overweight, I would suggest you go to those. And the thing is, I do have to often just turn off the volume and copy the exercises, emulate the exercises, because I don't like sometimes I don't like the noise, the background noise. And other times I can't understand what they're saying, especially if they're from a different country. I think that I'm not sure where this one is from, but I'll put the links down there if you want to just check it out. I chose a couple of ladies I liked because they weren't too skinny and too intimidating. and the exercises were gentle. But I just wanted to say that when you exercise, that just occurred to me today, why that's so important is to have that time. I've got exercise clothes, and I'll get dressed up in those, and I've got my exercise mat, and I have my exercise room. I'll make an appointment to go back there, and it's an event. It's an appointment. It's an event. And what a difference it makes, because what it does is it takes care of the machine that takes care of the house. It takes care of your mind too. And I was not aware of that until I started to feel so much happier and brighter and more able to grasp the thoughts and hang on to them and not lose them right in the middle of when I was talking. So I will try to print up as much of this as I can for those of you who don't like to watch a video. And I'm going to try to go through my notes really carefully here. And now, you remember the verse where the Bible said Jesus grew when he was younger. It was talking about, I bet that it was in Matthew. He said he grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with man. Now, I kind of divide that up into social, spiritual, and physical, or social, physical, and spiritual. So spiritual, he grew in wisdom. That's spiritual. And in stature, that would be physical, strong. And in favor with God and men, that would be spiritual and social. I'll write that all down for you too. And this is what we do when we're trying to overcome and come out better on the other side. And even Christ was not born in the best of times. He came in the worst of times. There were wars with kings going on at the same time. You can, if you're a homeschooler and you're interested, you can find online and maybe order even free this timeline chart of when Christ was on the earth and all the countries and who the rulers were. I believe there were 5 kings at the time in the known world, and what was going on at the time. You can do that with many things. You can find these charts that show a person, a famous person, or a Bible, somebody in the Bible, and what all the turmoil that was going on in the earth at the same time. And yet, what was Christ's message? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so that's what this message today is all about, is to remember we're cast down but not defeated. We still have to follow those rules that Christ made. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that is embodied in taking care of your home and taking care of your children. That you're doing both of those things when you do that. And it's interesting that I don't have the 10 Commandments right here to look at, but it's like the first 6 commandments have to do with loving God with all your heart, mind, and soul. You know, not having any graven images, and not taking the Lord's name in vain, and not having other gods before him, and on and on. And then that would be love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And then the last 4, I think, I may be wrong, you have to check this out, were love your neighbor as yourself. Don't steal, don't kill, don't bear false witness. And so Christ embodied all those in those 2 commandments. Isn't that wonderful? And so much easier to remember too. So let's come out of this and be well prepared. Most people I've talked to are happier because they say they had never really thought of having better preparation in their pantries and kitchens and better stockpiling. As a matter of fact, I had company 3 days, and was preparing for this company, and just didn't have, I just knew I wasn't going to have time to get out and get any more supplies for meals. So I looked at my pantry and I thought, I bet I could manage to get through it, and we did. Nobody had to take a break and run to get something. We had everything we need. Our fridge was fully stocked. So we always want to be prepared, and that's one thing that you can do to come out better on the other side, is learn to be better prepared. And one way that we do it is if Mr. S goes out, for me, instead of getting one thing that I have on the list, he'll get 2. And it depends on how often he goes out, so that we always have twice as much as that's on the list. Now, ladies, last time I talked to you, I wanted to go back to the exercise here. Exercise. It's just amazing. And if you have a list like this and you can put an X in the box after you've done your stretches, it just feels like you're a person. It's like my little boy said, I'm a person now. And that is the message to the young, and that is that you need to do something in your youth, leave something in your home that shows that you were there and that you made progress. If you want to get into painting or drawing, so that your parents have something from you. And for my daughter, she liked to quilt and sew, so I have little things that she made with quilt patches on them, like a little quilted pillow or a blanket that she made me, so that I have those, and I treasure those, because this may be the only time in your life when you're young that you have the time to do these things. When you get married and have your own home, there just isn't any time. You're busy looking after it all. And especially when you get your own children, there's no more time to do that. It seems like it's a long time before you get to really have some leisure time. So use this leisure time in your youth to leave something of quality that shows the progress that you've got in your life. Write newsletters, leave a little, I wish I had brought it to the table here, but I received a magazine, a handmade magazine in the mail from a 13-year-old girl, and it was adorable, and that's what she did, but everything in it was useful. She had stories, recipes, ideas. They'd been on an adventure, and she talked about a little mountain that they had climbed, and just all kinds of things. I'll bring that maybe next time. We'll have an unboxing. And so I want to go back to exercise, and that is, I mentioned in a previous video the bad habit of getting a distressing idea in your head, or thought, or listening to something that is, you might not even think it bothers you, but you stop breathing. You start holding your breath. You'll notice that you don't breathe as well when there's something that is very upsetting. And so when that happens, you need to take note of it. You know, God gave us the breath of life, and He wants us to breathe the air. So you need to learn how to breathe. You can get online and find breathing exercises that might be effective to breathe in, and to be very careful to take care of your body, because that's what you as a homemaker and a homeschooler need. That's your capital. That's your machine. You need to take care of it. Really take care of it. That's why I suggest exercise, even if it's just gentle exercise, because this is the thing that, this is the person that everybody else depends on, it seems like. I have so many thoughts going through my head, I'm not even paying attention to my notes, but one of the things, and I don't want to, if you're a school teacher and you're in the public school, I don't want to sound like I'm too negative about the public school, but I will tell you something. I will tell you something about this. And I want you to be sure to put your youth, if you're young, put your youth to good use. Now, the Bible says to be a living sacrifice, and let's focus on that word living, not sacrifice so much. Everybody knows what sacrifice is, but it seems like sometimes people get real religious, and then they'll use that word sacrifice. That just fascinates them. The word sacrifice fascinates them. The word martyr fascinates them. In fact, we had Fox's Book of Martyrs in our home when the children were growing up, and I noticed how interested some of the children were in that martyrdom. Just very interested, just fascinated them. You don't see it very much, so it was very fascinating. But let's remember that we weren't called to become martyrs. We're called to be living sacrifices. You're no good to anybody if you're a martyr, if you've been martyred. You're no good to your children. You're no good to anybody right now, and we are called to work for the Lord while we're here, and to be a living sacrifice. In other words, we put aside, what that means is you put aside our own maybe shallow, foolish desires and do the things that it takes to make your home function, to help your children, to take care of your children. And that's a sacrifice. That's the kind of sacrifice God wants us to do. It's the working sacrifice. It's the generosity. It's the love. And it is the training and teaching. That's the living sacrifice. And, you know, even a smile is a sacrifice, a living sacrifice. And the Bible talks about prayer being a sweet savor, a sweet sacrifice to the Lord. So let's not talk about depressing things like being a martyr. The reason I bring that up is that a lot of children will get into homeschooling, and that will be one of the books they will read. It's Fox's Book of Martyrs, and then they'll imagine that that's what they're going to do. But you can't do that, because this is a different era and this is a different time. And God wants us now to be living sacrifices. It takes on a whole different note. Now, I read to you a book called Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington, and I told you how much I liked that word, up from slavery. He could have said out of slavery. You know, now we're free and we're out and we're just going to run wild and free, but that wasn't what the book was about. And the reason I was so excited about reading that story is that that was how many of us began to homeschool. It was the same way that he operated this Tuskegee Institute, which was a boarding school, to help people come up out of slavery and learn a skill and learn to speak and to dress and to present themselves and to have good manners and to be clean. We did all that for the homeschool because, like, the first year, let's say you this might be your first year, but your children have already been exposed to the public school. Well, the first year, you do what Booker T. Washington did. You teach them how to truly bathe and take care of themselves and wash their hair and leave the bathroom clean and for other people, and how to dispose of the towels and how to clean up after themselves. And you teach them how to sleep. Remember, Booker T. Washington said he had a hard time teaching the students how to sleep between two sheets and how to properly sleep in a bed. And it was just the difference between being civilized and just kind of drifting through life. He gave them sections of life to be aware of, and he taught them how to eat, how to have table manners, and even taught how to set the table. And I noticed today people aren't as careful about setting the table, and it's too bad because I think we're so busy. People just kind of eat on the fly, eat on the run, or, you know, like I've always said, just eat a sandwich over the sink and stand in front of the fridge and drink the orange juice. But when my people come to see me, when my downline come to see me and all my descendants, I set tables, and I hope they don't have to. If they want to go outside and eat, they can, but I have tables everywhere with chairs and everything set properly because I want to encourage them to sit down while they eat, because it's an emotional thing. And I was watching these videos that I like. Goodness, is his name Italian Joe? I sort of liked he was a cook. He's a cook on YouTube, and he doesn't use, when he prepares Italian food, he doesn't use machinery. He doesn't use the processor, and he doesn't use the blender. He doesn't use anything because he wants to have the family cook together and do things by hand, mash things by hand, and talk and visit. And so that's the way it is with me when my people come, is I want them to sit down, take a little bit of time and talk and visit, because it's also, eating has to also be a social thing. Well, Booker T. Washington taught his students how to sit around a table and, you know, converse across the table, pass food, pick up the utensils. As a matter of fact, I learned something when I went to look up something else, and this is what homeschooling will do for you. The children will be reading about something, and then they want to know what it means, and they'll go find another book to look up. Well, this is back in the olden days when we used books. Now you have the internet. It's so much faster, so much more fascinating. And go look up something else and kind of go down a rabbit trail while they explore this one thing they're trying to find out about. And one of them was the fork. Well, the fork apparently was invented in France, and there were some people that had a very great dislike for it because it looked like a pitchfork and it looked like it was something people could just stab things with and get it in their mouth quickly and throw it in their mouth. But what we do, but the fork lasted in spite of the prejudice against it. The fork still exists. But one of my children looked up fork, and one of the reasons that it's put on the left side of a plate when so many people are right-handed is that it is expected that you would reach over and pick it up and bring it back over rather than just pick it up right away and start shoveling food in. And so that's how that ended up there. I think that's interesting. Well, anyway, Booker T. Washington it's an outline there in that book that you could follow as a homeschooler. First, get them to take care of themselves, learn how to eat without chewing with their mouth open, learn how to learn about food, learn what good nutrition is, learn how to set the table, learn how to excuse yourself, learn what to talk about at the table. I'm not saying you can't get into books and start studying and learning to read and write and all the literature and stuff, but really, you've got to do all this stuff first the way he did. He figured out he was going to have to teach his students some basics of life first, and that's the great opportunity you have right now. If the schools are closed or you don't want to go back, now you can learn. A lot of you are going to be sorry you didn't use this time we've already had behind us for this sort of thing. Learning to sleep properly and to wake up naturally, and learning how to go to bed, how to prepare to go to bed, how to wind down before you go to bed, how to wear clean night clothes, how to change your sheets, and what the importance of good bedding is. I love cotton, linen, bamboo, and natural things that help induce sleep in the bed. And you could have used this time so much better, but you've still got a chance. This could go on for some time, and now we can start coming out better. And one of the reasons so many of the 1980s ladies were so successful with their homeschooling is that no one was supporting them. No one would fellowship them. No one would include them. They were so sidelined and isolated. They said, well, we'll just do it at home. We'll just do our own thing. We'll just be successful on our own. And their children learned to write little books, and some of the mothers did too. And they had plays. They wrote their own plays and had dinner theater in their own home. And like I said, we pretended many times that we were on a trip, and we had long walks. Sometimes we would find we always lived on farms or in the country, and sometimes we'd find little places that looked like natural amphitheaters, and we would we would read the Sermon on the Mount, and imagine everyone sitting around listening to this. And so we said, and then we sewed, and we made so many of our own garments, and the satisfaction of it all. And so, yes, you can do this. But this Booker T. Washington book, Up from Slavery, was such a good pattern for success, because he introduced his students to proper behavior first, to cleanliness, to good speaking habits, and good work habits. Finishing what you started, putting things together. You mentioned that he had taught them how to build furniture, but sometimes it had all crashed, so they learned from it, and they learned to perfect it. And then he said they would be he would teach them something like very intricate mathematics or deep ancient history or some other thing like the English language and how to divide the sentences and spelling and fluent reading. These are very important, and good handwriting. These are very important. But you know what? It works better if your child is bathed, dressed up, has had a nice breakfast, has a clean working area, has his own paper, his own books. You know, when you go to school sometimes, at least in the olden days, the books, you know, they had been handled by students years and years and years before. You didn't ever have your own stuff. With homeschooling, you get your own shiny books. And, you know, what you can accomplish in homeschooling is something that the public school does not have the resources for. Now, you may wonder about that because they have money, they have facilities, they have all these labs and things, and they have a gymnasium, and they have that. They do not have the facilities to do the things that you can accomplish in your children and that God wishes for your children. They don't have those in the public school, because the greatest facility that you have is the heart of the mother, and they don't have that, because it is a relationship between the child and his family, his parents and his siblings, and they will love each other, and they will be defending of each other, and they will understand what the family name means and what the family means. That it's not just some place that they stop over for a few hours rest while they get ready to go somewhere else. And I always use that word somewhere else as some kind of a phrase showing how we think that somewhere else is more important than the home and where we are. And it isn't like that. And so you can also contribute a lot to society, to the world, to your family, and to the church by making your home that wonderful place that people would rather be than somewhere else. So ladies, I hope this has helped you. I'm just going to look over my notes really quick, make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh yes, be sure when you're making this kind of a little schedule to include thinking time and quiet time. I have done this before and told you this before, but some of you who are new here, I didn't label my videos intricately enough and detailed enough that you would never find this. But there was a certain time every day that the children had to go to a quiet place. Usually they were more comfortable laying on their beds, reading a book. They could write a letter, read a book. They could do anything else. They could put a puzzle together. They could do anything they wanted, but they had to be quiet. The doors opened, but it was a quiet time. And after half an hour or an hour, I would say they could come out. And at first they didn't like it, but I had quiet time too. But at first they did not like it. But then later on, after they had gone away from home, some of them told me those were the most precious moments of their life, those quiet times. So be sure and put that down there for you, and for those of you whose children are gone. Your nest is not empty. You know, I always hated to be labeled an empty nester because it's not true. It's like what the comedian that said, don't cry when your kids leave home, because they're coming back and they're bringing more with them. And my nest isn't empty yet because I've still got all the stuff. So ladies, then I also wanted to say that there was a scripture that I wanted to read to you. So I think I've covered just about everything, so I will repeat. Oh yes, I want to talk to you about people. That's always fun, isn't it? That's always the fun part. You know, I think one of the most common irritants is being around someone who gives us hasty, snippy, sharp reply, and it's always contradictory. Now, there's nothing wrong with someone disagreeing, who don't believe in the same thing you do, but there are ways to say things that don't come across as argumentative. And any time you say something that is contradicting and the opposite of what someone else says, there's probably going to be an argument unless the other person is extremely mature. And so one of the worst things I think I've heard is, I was watching two people together, and one lady said something, had observed something or had heard something, and she was repeating it, and the other lady said, well, no, it's not, as though she had heard it and been there. And also this same lady was describing something that her father had done, and the other lady said, oh, no, he didn't do that. And they weren't even related. But I mean, it's just this quick, hasty, sharp reply that's always negative. I don't think it can build up. You know, the Bible talks us building up one another, and in a family especially. We can't be at one another's throats, and we can't be devouring one another. And the mother and her children, the children will take on the habits of the mother. And so when your child is talking or doing something, if you are constantly saying the opposite or doing the opposite or just being so negative, after a while they'll clam up and they won't want to talk to you at all. But that's the way we are around people, isn't it? These negative Nellies that just don't accomplish anything. There are also other types of people who just seem to want to target the cheerful person because they're too cheerful. We've got to cut her off. We've got to cut her down. And one of the old McGuffey readers had a story of a mischievous lad who, they said he was described as when he saw happiness sitting on a post, he would knock it off. And that's what some people do. And you have to realize that some people just don't like cheerfulness. They don't like happiness. And they feed on morose things. They feed on negativity. And they love to say things like, well, that'll be the day. Or, well, that's not possible. Or they know, like they're God and they know that it's not possible. But I believe that we have to have hope, and that we have to believe that we are going to come out better on the other side of any kind of defeating situation, not defeated. Remember, I believe it's 2 Corinthians 4:8. We are cast down but not defeated. I think I could probably read that to you before I go. It's 2 Corinthians 4:8. I'll start with 7. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not driven to despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. That's pretty thick, isn't it? That's pretty heavy. You might want to look that up and ponder on it a little bit. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope to see you more often. So, ladies, I will finish putting some of those things on my blog for you, and God bless you, and I hope you have a lovely day, and hope you got a lot done. Bye.